morning, good afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are joining us from today. And welcome to the Global Financial Inclusion Week. This forum is titled Regional Trade Expansion, the Catalyst for Inclusive Finance and Prosperity for African Women. My name is Olori, and I will be one of your moderators alongside Onyeka, and we will be co-moderating this session. This forum is brought to you by the Borderless Trade Network, and we have put this together for stakeholders in the finance, trade, and NGO sector. If you want to follow the conversation, do not forget the hashtag for this week is FinClusion. BTN, which is Borderless Trade, chose to take part in the Financial Inclusion Week because at BTN we partner with businesses, investors, financial institutions, and government agencies to accelerate qualitative and quantitative solutions that drive women's participation in international trade and inclusion in global investment. Thereby, we hope to drive inclusive economic growth for the African world. BTN is heavily invested in driving more women, especially in this era, into international trade, especially because of the borderless Africa that we all live in today. So we hope for those of you watching, you also share our position that women should be positioned for this opportunity, whether it's with the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, or because we have just so many more opportunities with the world converging more than ever before. Now, to join me in this conversation, I've got to introduce our phenomenal panelist. We have with us Omilola Oshikoya from Lagos, Nigeria. She's a senior executive with almost 20 years experience in finance, in entrepreneurship, financial literacy, just to name a few things that she does, financial education, which is why we've brought her here today to really shed more light on the disparity between women and access to finance, especially in Africa. Welcome, Omi. Today. We also have Toyin Umesiri joining us from Chicago in the United States. She is an international trade expert with deep passion for advancing business, trade, and investment on the local, regional, and international level. Great to have you here with us as well, Toyin. And finally, we have Onyeka, who is, like I said earlier, my co-moderator. She has almost 10 years experience in the financial sector and runs an amazing NGO, and they're going to tell us all about it in a second. Great to have you here as well, Onyeka. A bit of housekeeping for everyone joining this conversation. You can drop your questions, comments in this forum. Please, we want this to be very fluid. We want the conversation to be as fluid as possible, just because we're all involved, we're all learning and contributing. So please feel free to drop your comments or questions as we go along. As I mentioned earlier, today's theme for this forum is Regional Trade Expansion, Catalyst for Inclusive Finance and Prosperity for African Women. Just to lay a bit of context, as many as 70% of women-owned small and medium-sized enterprises in developing countries are unserved or underserved by financial institutions. This is a recent report by McKinsey, and I think in driving today's conversation, it's important that we understand what we hope to get out of it, which is to look at the economic impact, both positive and negative, where we see these alarming numbers of women that are not receiving the kind of finance or access to finance that they deserve. To start us off, I'm going to jump right in, Onyeka. Tell us a little bit on why is access to finance, particularly for low-income women, a big issue, despite the rise in financial technology and innovation in the last 5 years?
Thank you very much, Olori. It's great to be here. A recent survey by the Athena on the Access to Finance 2020 survey highlighted that out of the 106 million adult Nigerians, we have 38.1 million adult Nigerians excluded from financial services. And alarmingly, we have 21.3 million adult women, making up that, demography of excluded people. And, part of the reasons they have, cited as barriers to access, you'd have institutional exclusion, low awareness, low access, and affordability. I mean, those are like the four usual suspects, right? And it's interesting, like you mentioned, in the last decade, and these barriers to access have actually been persistent, stubbornly persistent for women, for youth, and rural Nigerians since 2008. Now, we've had quite a lot of like you mentioned, financial technology, financial innovation, but why is it not translating, directly, to access for these women? Part of what I would highlight is that I think that let's talk about institutional exclusion now. Institutional exclusion will come about because you have not properly categorized your customers. The big banks, they do not really understand these people. But with our social enterprise, so what we do is we promote and provide inclusive financial services to the bottom of the bottom, right? So people I don't even call them having SMEs, I call them VSEs, very small enterprises. And, in engaging and interacting with them, they'll tell you things like, oh, they do not think they're looking for the kind of people in the banks. The banks just seem very huge and scary to them. Thank God, we have SANF now that has sort of like democratized access, and there's the advent, like every corner shop now you would see like a POS or a mobile money agent, which has also helped. But then there's the issue of trust, because why would I want to do my transaction with my mobile phone, my future phone, like it go lost now, something will happen, you get that type of thing. So I would say that, number one, the customer avatar, the customer profiling has not been properly done by many financial institutions. So they do not really know how to, provide financial services across the different, moments of, these women's lives. At some point, a woman is interested in childbearing. At another point, she's interested in, business, funding for business. But, keeping it, within the context of what we're talking about, especially for women in trade, there's a need for us to provide access to funding. These women are very small enterprises. They need funds. They need funds to scale their businesses. And that's what we've been doing. As a response to the COVID-19, October last year, actually, coincidentally, the last Global Financial Inclusion Week, we launched our microcredit scheme. And, by this October, we'll have been 250 women strong. And many of these women did not even have accounts. Mainly, we came in because we have like a three-pronged approach where we open accounts for them, and then we go through financial literacy programs. I know Omilola will be touching more on that. That's actually part of the clean shop, because when you actually, let them know why they need to get financially educated, why they need to separate their personal funds from their business funds, you'll see that, okay, it starts to make sense to them. These women have been in business for a while. Some of them don't even know. I always start with the question of, how many of you have started businesses and then the business closed after a couple of months and they do their hands like this? Because they didn't understand why. They didn't really get the concept of capital, of profits, and the rest. So with the mixture of, the adequate and relevant financial education, the type of financial products that is relevant to them, and then giving them, access. So basically creating more access points for financial services. So you have more agents, even getting more women to be involved as money agents, because, women, we kind of like gravitate towards each other and we trust each other. I think when we have all these things in place, we'll see these numbers, shore up, and then we'll start to see some positive figures. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that perspective. Onyeka, I mean, what you said now, and I'm just hearing you say, is the financial institutions need to profile the low-income women. They need to make it more, as opposed to treating women, in a very generic manner. And I think it's very wrong. I mean, these are some of the things in our network that I always try and tell people is women shouldn't be treated as a homogeneous group, because we have women with disabilities, we have women in rural areas, we have women are diverse in how we can categorize them. So we have to find solutions for them, especially in finance, in how to reach these women in a more effective manner. Because if there is a rise in fintech and innovation, it has to also reach the larger group. And you and I know that the informal sector is made up of women, right? But yes, yeah, I 100% agree with you. I'm going to move over to Omi. Omi, you advocate very strongly through your various platforms, a mission to foster wealth creation. and economic prosperity in Africa, with a particular focus on innovation, technology, startups, entrepreneurs, and the financial literacy and education of all of this, sort of tying it together for transformation. How do we include more women entrepreneurs in this mission?
I think, first of all, just even going back to piggyback off the question you asked, Onyeka, there are definitely several reasons why access to finance is still an issue for low income. I mean, let's not even just talk about just low income women, generally across board, across board, even for people that are professionals. I would say some of the reasons are changes in consumer behavior, lack of or zero distribution channels for financial institutions, lack of trust and objectivity of the financial institutions providing this product. But a major reason is the lack of financial literacy and lack of financial education. So what is financial literacy? The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development says it is a process by which consumers improve their knowledge of financial products and services. So in simple terms, if people understand what products are available, what the products are, and why it's important to get these products, they would, access this product. So if they, first of all, they don't even know the products that are available for them. They don't even understand why they need to, buy these financial products and services or access them, or, access this financing that's available. And so they don't take advantage. So that is a major issue. And, the importance of financial literacy cannot be overemphasized. A financially strong and healthy workforce provides the foundation for empowered, communities and economic growth. Now, let's look at Finland, for example. The percentage of financially educated citizens is about, I think, 63%, compared to Nigeria, that is about 26%. This is according to a 2017 survey. And now, if you look at it, Finland, 63%. That's why they have achieved, some of the things they have achieved. For example, best country in the world in comparison of human well-being, according to the Sustainable Society Index. They're amongst the world's richest countries, third most prosperous country in the world. 3 years in a row, Finland is the world's happiest country, according to the United Nations World Happiness Report 2020. So you can see the correlation between financial literacy and financial inclusion. I know that if we can, reduce the financial education gap, definitely the financial inclusion gap would also be reduced. Now, in terms of how, I think your question was, how can we then, help these women to gain financial literacy? I think that was the question, right?
Yeah.
One of the things, I'll just tell you 2 of the things that we're doing. As I already explained, the importance of financial education. So for us, we think it's important to expand access to financial education with a forward-looking approach to financial literacy. And this is why we do what we're doing. In 2018, we set up the first of its kind financial literacy and education platform, where we break down complex financial terms to as simple as ABC. Now, let me give you an example. I worked in investment banking. I was working in one of the biggest, at least maybe the second biggest asset management company in Nigeria, and the number 1 non-financial asset management company. And at the time, I had the only reason why I took advantage of the products and services that my company was selling or providing was because of targets, right? I didn't, and this is me that studied accounting and finance. So financial education is, there's a problem across, but now if you're talking about someone like me that's financially empowered, I worked in the finance industry, I studied accounting and finance, there's corporate finance, which is different from personal finance. You would imagine what happened to low-income women. So that's why we decided that, okay, let us, and a lot of the times when people watch, or read finance news or watch finance programs, it's kind of over the top, like all these terms are, things that they don't understand. So we decided that this platform will break down complex financial terms to as simple as ABC. And in the last 3 years, we've been able to, we have over 27 female contributors. We've been able to curate about 250 articles. We have online courses. We have daily stock market updates, exchange rate updates. We talk about world finance news, newsletters, online courses, finance dictionary, all of that. Another thing we're doing is we're also I think we were able to get organically 1,000 subscribers. What we now found was, because this is a practical example, because we were educating our audience organically, we didn't even do any publicity because we were trying to just build our content and our concept. Proof of concept. Because we were educating people, began to ask, oh, now I know I need to save. Now I know I need to invest. What savings options are available? What investment products are available? And so we saw that opportunity, and now we're transitioning into a fintech company so that we can also provide access to these products and services. And we've signed, so we're actually in fundraising seed capital stage. We've signed an agreement with the biggest financial asset management company backed by a financial institution in Nigeria and Africa to retail their some of their products. The second thing we're doing is that it's important to start at a very young age. Look, children take money to school, pocket money, right? And so it's important to teach from a young age. Warren Buffett started investing at age 11. The oldest Generation Z is already 25. So we need to focus not just on millennials, but on Generation Z as well. And so one of the things that we've done is we've signed an agreement with a global non-profit organization that is in 100 countries in the world and 12 in Africa. They're based in Ghana. We're producing the first of its kind in this side of the world, financial literacy animation series, where we're going to begin to teach these children about financial literacy, and it's going to be in French, Portuguese, and English. So those are some of the things we're doing. We've already started production for that as well.
Okay, that's amazing. That's quite robust in your approach. And it's great to have you here, Toyin. Thank you so much for joining us. Omilola, that was really, I love the way you took it sort of back and you took it up in terms of taking it up to say, hey, it's not just low income women that are having these issues. This is like evident, in everything that is happening in the business world. But coming to you, Toyin, Africa is home to some of the, world's fastest growing economies, right? And it offers exciting opportunities. And we see Africa as the new frontier for businesses looking for growth and new markets, right? But African women lag behind, right? They lag behind their sisters in most other regions. And with your work in Nazaru, could you tell us, with the current position of women entrepreneurs post-COVID, right? So they've had a double impact, whether it's with post-COVID or with the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. So they're looking at two double whammies in one. How do we then sort of help women deal with this impact? Almost like, how do we buffer them against any negatives? Because in all of this, we're still dealing with a lack of finance. And if I'm correct, I know that in order to even deal with cross-border trade, not even international trade, just across the borders, you need finance. So how do I, as a woman entrepreneur in Africa, position myself so I'm not getting any negative impact of both the Africa Free Trade Continental Area Agreement and COVID?
Okay. Thank you for having me. Great to connect with you, ladies. So the first thing is that the strategy has to change. From my own vantage point, let's talk about from a global viewpoint. Part of what I see is that the global view and narrative about the type of women that they talk about when they talk about Africa is women in the rural. The programs and initiatives that most of these entities develop, developmental agencies, most of the programs, they're usually designed around rural women. And that strategy has to change. because my belief is that investment needs to be made to the women in the middle, right? Empower women in the middle and lead the leaders, invest in those that will then take it forward, like what I'm hearing the women on this forum. The women on this forum are the ones I believe should be invested in so that you can then accelerate the work you're doing that would reach the grassroots. So what I find on the global stage is that there's not enough visibility to the great work that the women in this forum, the work you're having. There's no visibility. And because there's no visibility, you probably also struggle with accessing opportunities because they are skipping, most of these entities skip the process and they go straight to the grassroots. And because of that, there's no sustainability in those programs, because when the funding finishes, the program ends, pretty much they end up moving on to the next country, the next program, and there's no continuity. So for me, that's the first thing. That strategy has to change. And there are two ways it can change. One is to keep educating global stakeholders that in order to actually have a lasting impact on the continent, there's a group of women that are highly educated, highly sophisticated, that needs to be empowered. And why do we need to empower them? So they can empower women at the grassroots. So that's from their angle. But the other encouragement would be is that such women need to push their way into the global narrative, right? Because a lot of the activities that you're doing on ground, again, is not visible. So the work we do at Nazaru is we've literally built this entire bridge of platforms that allows the work that a lot of people are doing around Africa to be visible to the key stakeholders, because it's not visible. So that's what I mean by the strategy has to change on both sides. It's because the investors, they're looking for people they can trust or they can work with. They can't start skipping steps, right? They need to start identifying key leaders on the continent that they can collaborate with, that is on ground, that would bring sustainability and longevity and return on all of these activities. And that group of individuals is what we focus on, to empower them, to give them platforms to amplify their voices, to educate them in terms of trade and investment facilitation, right? Because you're caught in between making things happen. On one side, you have these stakeholders, and then on the other side, you have grassroots leaning heavily on you to bring resources to them. You're like the mom that has to, it's like the mama chicken that has to go out there, go get the food, bring the food home, and the chicks are already ready to take the worm. So anyway, I'm using that analogy to say that's the strategy that I think we need going forward, is identifying that we have strong, capable, leading women on the African continent that the world needs to recognize, identify, and invest in. So that's what I really strongly believe. And until we do that, I think we're going to have a long way to go. And also the same is true on the continental level, is that we work at the African Union. It's kind of similar structure, is that grassroots, rural women, those are the conversations that get put on the table, but not enough in terms of the middle players, the critical people that, the strategy needs to be train the trainer and empower those who empower the front lines. So that's a strategy that I think we need to embody.
Thank you very much, Toyin. Hi, this is Onyeka. It's really amazing, to have you say that, because you're really spot on. I would always say that part of the challenge is we do not have an absence of policies, but the problem is kind of in the implementation, and the problem in the implementation is there's no adequate stakeholder identification. People like us that, are the low-hanging fruits to say, let's empower you. I'll give an instance with even the government empowerment program that is called CHIP, and they've gone all out. They say, we're going to low-income people come to area councils, go and register. Once you register, we'll give you money, And I laughed, and they said they're going to make a huge bank, like a deposit money bank. They have compelled those people to say, you are going to make sure that this money comes back, because this is actually the second edition. The first one, they had like almost 80% non-performing loans. And we're saying you have people like me, you have people like Nkemo Kocha of Mama Money. These are people that are legitimately doing the work for the people at the bottom of the pyramid that you want. And we know these people because we have what it takes to bring them in. How do you actually empower these people so that you can go to bed and be sure that your work is being done, and then there's a perpetuation of the legacy that you want to leave. So it's really amazing. I'll definitely check out what you're doing at Nazaru. So we have a few minutes, I think 5 minutes tops to close. So I would ask, you've shed some light about some of the partnerships and collaborations that is happening, at the regional level. Very quickly in like a minute, 30 seconds, can you tell us how, with WOFIN, what you're doing, how we can help to achieve regional integration, because right now in this forum, we're talking about regional trade as a catalyst for driving inclusive finance. So Omilola, how can, WOFIN basically achieve this regional integration in terms of financial education?